Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The Temptations bring iconic Motown hits to MGM National Harbor Friday night on the edge of the nation's capital. I spoke with the late lead singer Dennis Edwards, who took over for David Ruffin in 1968, about the group's show at Howard Theater in 2016. Dennis, thanks so much. It's an honor. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. That theater is so important to me. I remember back in the early days, I joined the Contours, right?
Right.
And my very first venue, believe it or not, was opening up a show at the Howard Theater for a group called the Temptations with the Contours. So that was my first dip in the water, and I really enjoyed, the city, the theater back then, and the little restaurant across the street. So a lot of history there.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I know a lot of people know you from Temptations, but a lot probably forget you were with the Contours first. So you joined...
I was with the Contours first.
Yeah.
I joined the Contours, and it's so amazing. My very first road job was opening for the Temptations at the Howard Theater. And some of the memories I remember I was singing, and I looked in the wings, and there was David Ruffin and Ada Kendricks watching me, and I'm like, wow.
This is really happening?
Yeah, it's really amazing that we're coming back to the Howard now, the refurbished Howard, and it's sort of like a homecoming for me, man.
That is really cool.
My very first job, with the Contours, was at the Howard Theater opening for the Temptations.
It's come full circle.
Yes, and I remember, those great traditional theaters, there's something about them, it makes the entertainer just perform better. I don't know whether it's the atmosphere of them, it's the way they build them back in the days. The theaters nowadays, they don't have that family feeling that they used to have. The new theaters, I tell you what, when people are into you, it makes you better, man. It just makes you say, well, look, I got to give it to. Well, Washington has always been a place. When you come there, you got to come with it.
Definitely. Well, we appreciate that you bring it every time. What can we expect to hear if we come out? I
got a great group. If you remember the Temptations like you did in the 60s and 70s, that's what you're going to get. We're going to do most of the hits. We can't do them all. It would take about 4 hours.
Yeah.
Got a little comedy, man. A little emotional stuff going on. And, it's going to be a great Temptation show. It's going to take you back. We got hits, man. I don't even think none of us remembered not when we were doing the songs, but they will still be prevalent today. Yeah. But we just did a television show, and I never forget. It's a show about the things that happen in the street with the policemen, and the young men.
Yeah.
And what they wanted to hear was Ball of Confusion. And as I'm singing the song, I'm like, wow, this song was done 40 years ago, and it's still prevalent today.
It's funny you mentioned, I was thinking the same exact thing. Berry Gordy came here to D.C. They brought that Motown the Musical to National Theater. Right. And when the Temptations get on stage and sing Ball of Confusion, they're using that to comment on today. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's Norman Whitfield, God bless him, he's no longer with us. He was so far ahead, but we didn't even realize it. Like when we were doing the music, we were just trying to make good music. But some of the lyrics, when you listen to those songs, man, you can take it to every inner city in the world.
That's why I sort of say that there's no such thing as time or past or present. It's all interconnected, man.
Yeah, and music has such a great part of it. Mm-hmm. I remember we did a record called "Runaway Child Running Wild." Mm-hmm. And I remember back in the day, when kids would run away from I ran away one time until dinner time. I came back when I got hungry. But all of those songs, man, Ball of Confusion, Psychedelic Shack, all of those songs, it's Cloud Nine. It's about things that are happening today.
Definitely. But that's what makes it so timeless and so great. I love it.
It's going to be a great show, man. I got some great singers, man. If you miss this, you're going to miss something. We got 2 shows, and We're gonna bring Washington back to the old days.
We appreciate it. Speaking of the old days, take me back before Temptations, before even the Contours. You grew up in Birmingham, Alabama.
Grew up in Birmingham, and my father, he went to Detroit to get one of the factory jobs when they had a great industry, and the family came up behind him, and that's how I got to Detroit, and I got a chance to, hook up with Motown, and
yeah.
I mean the whole Detroit at the time was like a melting pot of all people from all different types. I know Eddie and Paul. They came to Cleveland first, then they came to Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Otis, they came from Texarkana. Melvin was living there. He came from Mobile, Alabama, and of course there was singing everywhere. We didn't have a great outlet at that time. We had to sing in the red light parties in the basement. I don't know if you remember those. But everybody would come up and the different groups would sing. Sometimes they would give us $5.
Wow, that's
so. But you know what? We were just happy to sing. But what people don't know, there was no outlet. I mean, for per se black music at that time.
Right.
We had a great industry, but there wasn't a black industry. We had the Reese's and the Sam Cooks and the Nat King Coles, but the door wasn't quite open yet for black groups. And of course, Berry Gordy came along with the dream he had. We made clean music. We dressed ourselves up. We got class about it, and we're bringing that same thing to the stage of Howard.
Yeah.
We learned how to not say four-letter words, to be classy, to act like gentlemen, and of course all of that sometimes today it gets lost.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Do you pine for the days where and do you think it would ever come back?
One reason is back in our day we had a censorship department. You couldn't. They wouldn't play a record with a four-letter word.
Right.
Of course, when they did all the cuts, they cut out a lot of good stuff. They said, well, that's okay. You can say four-letter words on the. They always told us that if you said a four-letter word on the radio, the kids would get it, and it wouldn't be good for the kids.
Right.
Well, a lot of things have changed. I'm not knocking these kids' music because they have some great music. They're probably making more money than we made because they own their music.
You know it.
They're smart.
Yeah.
But it's just. I'm so glad they've sort of cleaned up the music a little bit. They don't call the women the B word so much no more.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you even with what was it, Bruno Mars and stuff? They got the class back. They dress up.
They got the class back. It's like because you look at groups like the Temptations, OJ's, and Gladys, we're still working.
Yeah.
And because we work for all types of audiences, we work for audiences that you can bring your whole family to.
Definitely.
You can sit there with your grandkids, your mom, and everybody can enjoy a good show. We don't come for nobody to fight. We come for you to go home and make love.
Exactly. Hey, tell me about the Fireballs way back.
The Fireballs, I was in the service. Actually, when people talk about the Holocaust, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of people tend to say they weren't crematoriums. I guarded a crematorium.
You saw
I was stationed in Dachau, Germany.
Wow.
And I got a chance to look at the ovens. Most eerie thing in my young life. I was in the service. Well, anyway, while we were there, one of the gentlemen who was in the service with me, his father worked for Berry Gordy. And Berry used to send all of the latest Motown records over. Well, one record in particular I heard was a group called the Temptations. They were singing My Girl with a guy named David Ruffin. And it kind of gave me the itch. I could always sing a little bit. So I formed a little group. We used to go down to Munich, Germany when we got off for duty, and there was no music. So one day I got up there at the piano, and I went up there and I started singing on the piano. He turned the mic on. I found a guitar player, found a drummer.
Do you remember
bass player.
Do you remember what songs you sang?
What
songs did you sing? Do you remember?
I was singing everything. I was singing My Girl, anything that they would send us. They were sending us music from Motown.
Right.
And but what we did, I started entertaining the soldiers.
Wow.
Because we were over there, we would go to the bar and we would drink all night, and there was no music. And I started playing, and so finally the owner of the club, he said, can you come back on the weekend? And that was my first little job. And so when I got out of service, I started dinner set within the Fireballs.
Wow.
And we played at a little club in Detroit called Mall's Lounge, and it was very successful. All the Motown acts used to come in, and I remember one guy in particular who was really significant in getting me started, James Jamerson.
Wow.
The great bass player for Motown. He is the guy that's responsible for me being in Motown. He set up an audition with Mr. Gordy. I signed with the company. They didn't have roster room for me, so they paid me a retainer for about a year for doing nothing. You know, I'm a young kid. I said, wow, what's going on with this?
Yeah, exactly.
And sure enough, I got the call to sing with the Contours. One of the Contours, they got sick. What Mr. Gordy did with me, he kept me as a substitute for anybody.
Right, I see.
And I started, like I said, my very first stage show. I practiced with them for 1 week, and I was on the stage at the Howard Theater opening up for a group called The Temptations. Isn't this ironic?
Definitely.
That was my very first stage show.
We all love the Contours too. Do You Love Me? And Watchmen Now.
Do You Love Me? You know, first I look at the purse.
God, so many good ones. Wow.
It was a lot of great ones, you know, but it's so ironic. I'm coming right back to the Howard again with my Temptation review. So I'm just looking so forward to it, man. It's going to be really great.
Definitely. Before I want to move into sort of the Temptations days because we covered the Contours in the early days. But before we move on, you mentioned I want to know more about your service in the military. When did you enlist?
Well,
when did you enlist?
I spent 3 years in the Army, and of course, like I said, it was so eerie, man. I got stationed there at the concentration camp in Dachau.
Wow.
And we got a chance to look at the medical facilities where they used to do experiments on people, take one person's arm off and one person's head.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just so gory. Behind the base was a concentration camp.
So, do you
They still had the concentration camp there.
Do you remember the name of the base you were stationed at?
Dachau. It was the name of the base was oh my God! It was in Dachau, Germany.
It's
I know
okay.
we were in SACOM,
Okay.
7th Army.
Okay. And what year did you enlist?
That was in '59.
Wow, man.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, but I think this is cool, and our listeners are, especially being a news station, they're gonna love this backstory.
Yeah, you know, and you know, I hear a lot of people, you know, there never was a Holocaust. Man, I went and they gave me a tour of the ovens. They had the first room was like with shower spigots where they would gas the people, right?
Yeah.
Then they would take them over. They had 3 different size ovens
Oh my God.
that you could pull. And then when the people when they would die, they would take them and they would take the gold out of their mouth.
Right, yeah.
Oh my God.
God.
It was just so eerie.
So when people say that, you can say, no, I saw it with my
I
own eyes.
guarded the place. You know,
Yeah.
it was so eerie, man. I'm telling you, it's just. And at nighttime, you know, sometimes we would have guard duty going around the crematorium. Nobody ever got around the backside because there was always a story. Don't go around the backside.
Man, seriously.
Because it was just. But that I spent 3 years in that place.
Wow.
And
well,
you know.
thank you for your service.
Huh?
Thank you for your service.
Well, you know, it kind of grows you up, though.
Yeah.
You know, I wish some of these kids today could go through some of the experiences, you know, of things like that. They can appreciate life a little better.
Yeah. So you come back here.
I come back home.
And you do the fireballs, you do the Contours, and you're appreciating life, and so you're just rolling now. And then you open for the Temptations at Howard Theater. How did you act? And so do you before they asked you to join them? Do you remember all of that? Because the Classic Five, what they did?
Well, you know, me and David Ruffin actually became such good friends. You know, in fact, he was my idol. You know, David was everybody's idol.
Yeah, right.
And of course, he used to come out of the club where I worked, and you know, the people loved the club where I worked because I used to draw a lot of pretty women. So you get a lot of men when you got a lot of pretty women.
Right. Exactly.
And
That's just how it works.
it kind of works that way. and we became friends over the years. They all would come down, and I never in 1,000 years even thought I would be singing with the Temptations.
Yeah.
I remember I got the call. Even when I got the call from David. David said, "I'm leaving, and they want you to replace me." And I'm like, "Get out of here."
That's
so
crazy.
that's how it started.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what year you replaced him in what, like 68?
In 1968.
Okay. So before that, they had already rattled off a bunch. They had done Ain't Too Proud to Beg and Get Ready and all that
to
stuff.
me, they were the greatest group in the world without me.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I love the five of them, man. I'm going to tell you. People ask me all the time, what about yourself? Look, I don't care about myself. I enjoyed, I was so hurt when David told me he was leaving the group. Because it's just like a well-oiled machine, and you just don't want it to break up, but it breaks up.
Yeah. Well,
but I was also happy that I had the opportunity to become a part of it, of course.
Yeah, so it's like that sort of old classic bittersweet thing. You hate to see him go, but it was a good opportunity for you.
Right, it's a good opportunity for me.
So explain sort of how you helped bring the group sort of in a new direction, because Motown started to evolve into psychedelic and funk and disco. How did you guys sort of evolve?
Well, you know what, we were sitting in the studio, and of course, David was some hard shoes to fill. I don't think there'll ever be another one,
Right.
And we were listening to songs, and they had to be real careful because David was almost like the Temptations king at that time,
Right.
And to replace him was a difficult job. Sometimes when you place a guy like David, you lose the whole group.
Right.
Well, we were sitting around trying to figure out what kind of song to sing and what to put out so the public would like it, because it's going to be a hell of a void with David gone. Well, I think Norman had listened at this group from San Francisco called Sly and the Family Stone.
Oh, of course.
And I never will forget it. What was so significant about them was that the Temptations, Otis, Eddie, Paul, Melvin, myself, everybody were lead singers.
Right.
But they never used, back in those days, it was a lead and it was background.
Right.
Well, Sly came out with Dance to the Music and had all the different leads on it. Next thing Norman came up with was Cloud 9.
Yep.
And, of course, it was laughed at. They didn't want to release it. But guess what? It won the very first Grammy Award for Motown Records.
So there you go.
And what's so significant? It had it featured all five of us, which was, it kind of set a precedent for something new,
Right. It wasn't just background singers. It was everybody
right.
got.
And we were taking a hell of a chance because, you got this great lead singer, man. And then here comes a group comes out with this sort of psycho soul music. Are they going to like it? It just so happens that the country was going through that type of period at the time.
Exactly.
And Norman hit it right on the head.
Perfect. Awesome. So Cloud 9 was, they weren't expecting, and it won a Grammy. We mentioned Ball of Confusion earlier.
Ball of Confusion.
Yeah, and then take me into when Papa was a Rolling Stone.
When Papa came out, well, we heard the track, and we thought it was like, well, that's some nice music, but they're not going to play that. At the time when jocks, you know how jocks are, they played 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And Papa was like 6.5 minutes. And I had another problem with it. Well, I come from a real religious background. My father was a minister. And, of course, my mom, she never did enjoy me singing with the Temptations because I was singing for the devil.
Oh.
And then the lyric, it was the 3rd of September, that day I always remember. That was the day that my daddy died.
Oh.
Well, believe it or not, my father died on the 3rd of October. And it was so close and so ironic.
Yeah.
Until in my household, man, it was like, wow. And, of course, when I got to the part about Papa was a Rolling Stone, my mama, your daddy wasn't on Rolling Stone?
Yeah, I'd say, who are you singing about?
Yeah, he was here all the time. He took care. So those two things got blown out of proportion. They heard about them. Of course, the publicity people, they went to town with it.
Yeah,
oh
but
my God,
that's
we could
some
use this to sell the record.
right.
The record eventually sold 6 million copies, and we won 2 Grammys with that, and it became a national hit.
It's even to this day, people can, and when he died, everybody can do that. But even if it wasn't exactly your specific life story, so many other people could relate to that, you know?
Yeah, it was and you know what? You think about the late great Norman Whitfield. He's gone now.
Mm-hmm.
He was so far ahead of his time, because if you listen to most of his songs, they had a little story, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and they had at the time. When we did them, they were a weird story then. Some of the stories now are really nice, good stories.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I know we don't have to go through all the songs because we'd be here all day. But let's do maybe one more. After what else was? Take Me Into Just My Imagination. I love that song.
Well, Just My Imagination was a change. We had went through the psychedelic thing, the Joneses, the Ball of Confusions, and psychedelic shacks, and and all of a sudden, of course, the trend changes. Norman, he said, "Look, why don't we sing a pretty ballad?" We had one of the greatest tenor singers in the world in the group, Eddie Kendricks. So they came up with this beautiful, beautiful Just My Imagination, and it became a smash. And of course, it was a launching pad for Eddie Kendricks. Although Eddie was there all the time, he was the background singer. Eddie was one of the most important people in the group. And, he was there, and his voice came out, and it was so sweet and beautiful. That song became a beautiful hit. Of course, during that time, Eddie was having a few problems with management and all, and he left the group right after that.
Yeah. It's just a great song, though. Tell me, so bring it sort of back around full circle. You mentioned your mom thought you grew up in a gospel religious household, and she thought you were going to sing with the devil with the Temptations. Did she ever come around on that? And would she today look back and say, if she were around, would she look back and say, be proud of what you all accomplished?
Well, I was raised in the Kojic sanctified people, and of course. You got to realize those people, they serve the Lord. They serve Him really, really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand. I was a young singer, and I just wanted. When you get the opportunity to sing with a group called the Temptations,
yeah,
you have to say, well, look, I'm still going to be a Christian, but I'm going to go out here and try to make this money.
Exactly. You can do both. You
can do both, and It worked out so funny. I always tell this story about my mom. My mom wouldn't even take money from me for a while. They were so bitter in my household, and I never will forget. I brought $1,000 home one time, and Mom said, "I don't want that money. That's the devil's money." So I left the money on the fireplace. Believe it or not, around the 28th of the month, my mom called me one day. She said, "Junior," she called me Junior. "I hope the Lord don't mind if I take this $1,000 and pay this rent."
Exactly. Well, I mean, why do you think that it was? Just being on the road, or people aren't used to certain music yet?
You call them holy rollers.
Yeah.
They are, like I have often said, my mom's in heaven now. If anybody made it there, she made it.
Yeah, right.
We got people in this world that really serve the Lord.
Right.
And I love them for it.
Right.
Because the days she brought me to church every night and took me to prayer meeting and Bible band and choir practice, those are the days that are helping me now.
Yeah, exactly. It's all come back.
The days that are helping me still be here in this world and get my life together.
Mm-hmm.
Those people, man, they are so. And when they look at you and tell you something, it's real because it's true.
Right. Oh, that's great. That's cool that you still think about them all the time, and and you can appreciate how it's helping you now.
Yeah. Well, every time I do a show, we join hands and we just thank God, because it's just a blessing that God has blessed us with a talent to do something that we like to do, and you get paid for it too. I mean, who can be more blessed than that?
Well, we can, because we get to watch you guys.
Well, that's true.
Thanks so much for coming. Is there any, final thoughts? I think
No, just everybody needs to be there. It's going to be two great shows. We're going to take you all the way back, and we're going to do some new stuff. We're going to do some old stuff. I got some great singers I'm bringing with me. We're going to be wearing them costumes. It's going to be shining. And it's just going to be a great evening.
Dennis Edwards of The Temptations, thank you so much.
Yeah, great. The first radio station there. I'm listening to some of the stuff.
Yeah, it's an all news station. So
that's great, man. That's what we need.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, I'm glad.
I was listening at some of the broadcasts and some of the subjects, and I'm as you live long enough, you get real interested in a lot of stuff.
Yes.
I mean, some things that need to be said are not being said.
That's what we try to do. It's a lot of politics. It's a lot of everything.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good stuff there, man.
Edwards sadly passed away 2 years later in 2018, just months before I spoke with founding member Otis Williams about the Temptations' musical Ain't Too Proud at the Kennedy Center.
Mr. Otis Williams of the Temptations, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Oh, my pleasure. How you doing?
Remind our listeners who's with you in the group now, because obviously Dennis Edwards passed away just recently. Rest in peace. And who's performing with you?
Well, two of the guys that's been with me for over 20 years. Ron Tyson, he's been in the group for about 30, almost 40 years. Terry Weeks has been with me for over 20 years, and then we have two new guys, Larry Braggs and Willie Green. So they're the two new guys, and so they have been doing a marvelous job of helping to carry on the state of the Temptations.
Awesome. Remind me how you met David Ruffin to begin with, and how you guys actually formed there back in the early Motown days. How did that actually come together?
Well, I'll give you a very abbreviated because to get into detail, it can be quite lengthy. But David and I lived in the same neighborhood. He was a noted solo artist, as well as my group was known for what we were doing. And he just said one day, after hearing about how good we were in and around Detroit, he wanted to join the Temptations, which I was happy that he could. And that's when David joined Eddie Kendricks, Paul Williams, Melvin Franklin, and myself. And that's the origin of the classic Temptations. And, we were at the right place at the right time. Detroit, Michigan, Motown starting back during the 60s. And we were there with Mr. Gordy, and we recorded around, 8 or 9 singles before we got The Way You Do the Things You Do, which, set us off to becoming known for having hit after hit after hit.
I love that one. When you can rhyme candle and handle, you're good to go. How about why do you think?
Yeah, that's what I said. That's what I told Smokey.
Of course, you told Smokey.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think? My Girl? Take me back to when you guys were actually recording that one. Did you have any idea it was going to blow up like that, or just take me into when you guys were actually recording that one?
Well, when Smokey presented My Girl to us, at first, because Smokey is such a noted songwriter and producer, so you don't turn down nothing that Smokey Robinson brings to you to sing. And so when he brought My Girl to us, at first we said, okay, it's a great sounding song, but I think the magic happened aside from when we put our voices on. When the strings and horns were added, the great Paul Reiser added the strings and horns to My Girl. And I went into the studio, in the control room, rather, and Smokey was sitting at the console, and I said, man, I don't know how big a record this is going to become, but I really think it's going to be huge. And at the end of December 1964, February 1965, we got a telegram from Mr. Gordy and the Beatles congratulating us about having a number one record and sold over 1 million copies. And that was we were at the Apollo in February of 1965, so we've been rolling even more so ever since then.
And My Girl is such a smooth, suave song. It just takes its time, Stephen. But then Ain't Too Proud to Beg just charges out of the gate. I know you want to lead. Like, how'd you decide that we're going to go in that direction for that one, and we're going to hit it hard right from the start of that song?
Well, I have to give credit to the late, great Norman Whitfield. Norman and I we grew up together in Detroit. He used to be part of Popcorn Wiley and the Mohawks, and my group was Otis Williams and the Distance. So I knew he was a noted little tambourine player. So to know Norman from being a tambourine player to become a very noted producer, and he would come by my house and he said, Otis, listen to this, what you think? So when he brought Ain't Too Proud, the track to Ain't Too Proud to Beg, I was knocked out, over because the track was so earthy and funky and what have you. And the funny part about Ain't Too Proud to Beg was when David Ruffin, after we had put the background down, we said, all right, David, it's your turn to go down and put the lead on. And the key was a little bit high for David, but so we were in the control room, urging him on. Come on, Ruffin, you can do it. And he was singing it, and we had to take it in spots, places and what have you. And David, when he came out of the control room sweating and his glasses was all sideways, it was something that I always remember and brought a lot of laughter to us. So we had some fun doing Ain't Too Proud to Beg.
Well, we had some fun listening to it. One more question of your guys' career. Explain how you guys evolved as you got into the 70s and you brought in Dennis Edwards and, Papa Was a Rolling Stone, and then even like Ball of Confusion. You guys are really, that still holds up today with some of the social commentary. So talk about how you guys were able to, some staying power and evolve as a group rather than just the old Motown sound that we love, but you were able to grow and change with the times.
Yeah. Well, that is the wonderfulness of having five guys that could sing most anything. Norman Whitfield knew that as well as Smokey, and, like I've always told people, the one thing that's constant in life is change. And at that time, with the political aspect of what was happening during the 60s and 70s, and here come Norman, bringing us songs like Cloud Nine, Runaway Child, Ball of Confusion. And, in fact, even when we do Ball of Confusion, which we still do, that song is over 40 years old, but it's so apropos to what's happening in the world today. So it was like Norman and Barrett was, they could see into the future in the sense of lyrically, because I listened to the lyrics, I said, man, there's still craziness going on in the world, and that song was number one record and over 40 years old.
It's always going to be timeless. All right, well, in closing, the Kennedy Center has the Temptations musical, Ain't Too Proud. Yeah. We had the cast in here yesterday interviewing them about the Kennedy Center show. The Young Bucks performing you guys. But I wanted to know how involved you were with putting that show together and if you've seen it yet.
Oh, I saw it up in Berkeley. And then last night, because I'm still here in D.C., and I was mesmerized because they doing such a great job. I didn't have any hand in picking them. I have to give credit to Tom Halsey, Ira Pittleman, and Des McAnuff because they were the brain thrust behind, assembling everybody. But I sat down with the guys up in Berkeley, and I gave them the little nuances and the things that the Temps were noted for, and they came to my room at 7 in the evening. They didn't leave my room until 1 o'clock the next morning, sitting there asking me all kind of questions. What make the Temps do this? Why did y'all do this? How did you do this? So, and I told the one that's playing David Ruffin, I said, well, if you really want to capture close to David Ruffin, David was known for throwing the microphone up in the air, turning around, dropping to his knees, and grabbing it as it would come down. The next time I saw Ephraim, he was doing just that. So they were clinging to every little thing that I could tell them about the classic Temps.
That's great. What do you want people to take away when they come to the Kennedy Center and they see the musical? What do you want them to take away about your guys' career? Because obviously in shows, you got to have conflict. You got to, the ups and downs. That's like any musical. But what do you want them to take away from the Temptations?
Well, I want them to take away from the thing that I was being interviewed earlier, that the guy said, Otis, when I saw the play last night, people will live vicariously through you guys, because at the time that we were going through, a lot of people were growing up right along with us. He said, when I sat there and saw the show, it made me think back about what I was doing and what was happening in the world. So I'd like for them to take with them that, it's all relative, even though we are up on stage doing what we do. But we still have the same thing of life like a lot of people do. And I'd like for them to take that with, like, wow, I can really relate to the Temps. Or some of the things that they saw that we went through, they were quite surprised. So that's the element of a good show, when you can take away with you wonderful memories and wild, sad times. But then again, that's what life is all about. And these guys are doing a wonderful job of portraying us.
Otis Williams, thank you so much for taking the time. It was an honor.
Well, thank you. My pleasure.
I spoke with Williams again in 2020 when the group played the virtual Capitol Fourth concert during the pandemic.
Hey, Otis, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. Oh, my pleasure.
The last surviving member of the Temptations, because you'll be participating in the virtual Capitol Fourth. How exactly did that work? Did you perform remotely at your house, or how'd you do it?
No, we did it in the studio here in Burbank. And it was kind of different, because we're used to singing and performing in front of an audience. But, you have to do what you have to do under the circumstances that we're under. So we pulled it off, but it was kind of different. But, show business is very flexible, and you have to be able to do that at times, and we were able to rise to the occasion.
So how many of you guys were there in the room there?
Well, aside from the temps, then, you had the technicians and the camera people and what have you. So it was closely guarded personnel. It wasn't for a whole lot of people, but the makeup artist and the guy, the director, and, the general norm of things as far as when you do a TV show.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as socially distanced as possible, but you got to have the performers in there. So, well, that's cool that you did that. What can you give us a little teaser of what you guys performed? What we'll be seeing?
Sure. Well, we did like a 3-song medley. We did Get Ready, and out of Get Ready, we went into Ain't Too Proud, and then from Ain't Too Proud, we closed out with My Girl. So it was a tight 6-minute plus medley. The one thing that's constant in life is change, and being able to adapt to change is a wonderful thing.
That's great. Now, I think I saw that in addition to these newly recorded performances, they're also going to show highlights from previous years. Do you have any fond memories of performing previous years?
When we have been around, you've been around like we have for 60 years, there are a lot of wonderful memories that I, think back on. And I've had such an illustrious career that the many times that we were on Ed Sullivan, the time that we got our star on Hollywood. I mean, the list is endless. I walk around in my house and look at all the accolades that I have achieved, that I am just as amazed as a fan that didn't know. So I've had a wonderful career, being part of legendary Motown Records, and making history, and to a certain extent changing history music-wise, and even as far as everyday life is concerned. So I'm just as amazed at what the Temptations have been able to achieve and bridge gaps. I never will forget, we were over in a world tour in '75, and I ran across 3 soldiers when the Vietnam War had just ended, and they were telling me what Motown's music meant to them. And as they were telling me this, they were standing there crying, which brought me to tears to let me know that music is such an impactful force that we were able to even touch our soldiers as having their lives on the line. But they would come back to the base camp, and the first thing they would ask, we want to hear the Temptations, we want to hear Motown, so to be a part of something that glorious is wonderful.
That's awesome. Can you remind our listeners how you guys actually all got together there? You mentioned Motown, but how you met Berry Gordy and David Ruffin and how that whole thing came together.
Wow, well, I'll try and condense it because it's a long
I know
it came about. Yeah, but well, to start off with how I met Mr. Gordy was my group at the time was Otis Williams and the Distance, and we had a little regional hit called Come On. And so Mr. Gordy came in to St. Stephen's Community Center with Smokey and the Miracles. And after the crowd finally let us come off the stage, Mr. Gordy, I'm standing there watching the Miracles. I'm saying, right, that's Smokey and the Miracles. And when I had them standing there, Mr. Gordy said, I like your group, the record that you have. If you should leave where you are, come see me. I'm starting my label. And that was 1960-61. And as fate would have it, we left the label that we were with, and I called Mr. Gordy, and I told him we were available, and he asked me to call Mickey Stevens, who was in charge of A&R. And at the time, the lineup consisted of Eddie Kendricks, Paul Williams, Al Bryant, Melvin Franklin, and myself. So this was pre-David Ruffin. And then 4 years later, David Ruffin joined the group, and we were off and running.
I mean, what a run you guys had, too. And talk about how you guys, you guys were able to keep evolving over the years. So, you had David Ruffin there in the beginning, but then talk about how you were able to then transition, into the 70s with Dennis Edwards joining and, it evolved for a new era.
Well, Dennis joined the group in 1968. And at the time, that was when psychedelic soul was starting to become, very famous and popular. And the times where we were in New York City, and at the time I was talking to my good friend Kenny Gamble of Gamble and Huff. And as him and I were talking, we heard Sly and the Family Stone with a different sound and approach. And we were impressed with that. So as the Temps flew back to Detroit, and Norman Whitfield, who was our producer at the time, I said, Norman, there's a new sound that's coming about. Maybe we should try that. And so Norman went into the studio and recorded Cloud 9. And that was, like I said, 1968. And then Cloud 9, was a slow start because our fans had gotten so used to hearing us do the My Girl Since I Lost My Babies and what have you. But Cloud 9, kicked off. And next thing you know, it sold over 1 million copies. And we were the first act for Motown to win a Grammy. So that's how that came about.
That's great. And you mentioned a few seconds ago about how your music helped, bring people together, the troops and everything. And even back home, people of all different colors and creeds, could rally around the fact that they love the Temptations in Motown. Talk about, in light of, today with, there's been the Black Lives Matter protests and so many divisions and stuff, but talk about how with Ball of Confusion and, it's that ball keeps rolling on, but you guys were talking about it even back then.
Yeah, well, music can be such a great ointment, to the soul and for the soul, that's the wonderful thing about music. It can bring people together. We can escape when we are in some kind of turmoil or what have you. Music is a soul-satisfying medicine, and I'm so glad that we have been able to administer that through the efforts of music, and it's a powerful force, and I often wonder, boy, what would this world be like without music? Because I've seen it bridge gaps. I've seen it bring people together. I've seen it move people to tears and what have you. So it's got a lot of wonderful attributes to it, and it's a powerful force. It should never be taken for granted. So I am so thankful and blessed that I am part of something that has become so renowned worldwide, not just here in America, but we've gone to different parts of the country and we've seen them, rejoice. And we went behind shortly after the Iron Curtain came out. We were in Gdansk, Poland. And as we were singing My Girl, Papa Was a Rolling Stone, here we had a country that spoke a whole other language, but they were singing our songs in English, and I was amazed at that. So it's just wonderful to be part of something that is so strong and caring.
Yep, and just sort of bringing it back full circle to Capitol Fourth, it's that same vibe, Are you're hoping that a show like, a big, nationally televised concert like Capitol Fourth, they're still doing the fireworks, for in person. If people are quarantined looking up at the sky, they can still see it. But I'll talk about how you hope the show can bring people together at a tough time. I feel like we've had a double whammy with, there's the racial unrest for sure with George Floyd, but then we have coronavirus, so it's like a double gut punch. People are dealing, and then the economy too. People are dealing with a lot. We got a divisive election coming up. Why is this a moment for people to sit back and come together for the Independence Day?
Well, it's like a heck of a combination punch by a heavyweight boxer, and we need to really try and stay focused. We know what we got to do as a country, because we're going through big turmoil of things that's happening to this country of ours. But I hope that through the efforts of what we do can be like a soothing arm to a troubled soul, And it's just unfortunate that we're going through this, but I'm a believer that we will come through it. We just got to galvanize as a people and as a country and to get through it. And, in life you're going to be tested, and I think this is one of the tests to see how great we are as a nation to really come out of this. And I'm staying optimistically, hopeful that we will get through it. And I'm just glad that through what the Temps are known for its music and for what we do, we can add another, big plus to a troubled soul, and let us get through this and enjoy ourselves as much as we can when we can.
Awesome. Well, that's the perfect place to leave it. Hey, thanks so much, Otis Williams of the Temptations. Thank you much, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.